Dear President Freund, dear President Cloetingh, dear President Lovász, distinguished presenters, dear guests, welcome at the launch event of the Academia Europaea Budapest Knowledge Hub. My name is Gergely. I'm the head of the President's office, and today as the Hub manager, my task will be to guide you through this launch event. First of all, we will hear 3 welcome speeches, which will be followed by an introduction of the 4 thematic missions of the Hub. Some of the presentations were recorded before in advance, others will be live, but all presenters are in the Zoom meeting now, so after each session you will have the opportunity to ask questions and make comments. To do so, please use the raise hand button in the Zoom application. This button is only available if you have the participant list switched on, so in advance please press the participants button. I would like to remind you that the event is being recorded and the video will be at the MYAE website and the YouTube channel of the Hungarian Academy of Sciences. I would also like to ask the audience to please mute your microphones during the event and only turn the video on if you want to ask a question. After this short introduction, I would like to ask Professor Tamás, Freund, President of the Hungarian Academy of Sciences, to open the event. Mr. President, the floor is yours.
Dear Professor Cloetingh, President Lovász, distinguished Hub directors, members of Academia Europaea, dear colleagues. It is my pleasure to welcome you all at the online launch event of the Academia Europaea Budapest Knowledge Hub. Certainly, it would be even nicer to welcome you here in person, as we had planned, and show you around in the palace of the Hungarian Academy of Sciences that will host the Hub in the future. But let's focus on the positive side, the efficiency and comfort of the meeting in a virtual space and our ability to share this important moment with a larger audience. The foundation of the Academia Europaea Knowledge Hub in Budapest was an idea long cherished by many, but it took the dedication and perseverance of my predecessor, Professor László Lovász, and the President of Academia Europaea, Professor Sierd, Cloetingh, to pursue this plan to the end and make this hub a reality. There is no better proof for their commitment than the fact that Professor Lovász also undertook to become the first academic director of the hub, and that Professor Cloetingh, despite all difficulties, actually traveled to Budapest in person to sign the contract that creates this hub. The launch of the Budapest hub carries several messages. It is above all a testament to the indisputable affiliation of Hungary and the Hungarian scientific community to Europe. It is a testament to our commitment to European values and traditions and our conviction that science is an integral part of European culture that should not be perceived simply as a necessity that leads to innovation and serves the common economic interest. The opening of the hub is also one of the first acts performed under the renewed strategy of the Hungarian Academy of Sciences, which we had adopted following the detachment of our research network that we had to suffer last year. It shows our intention to build our programs on a wider base and to engage with the public more directly. The membership of our public association that now counts 18,000 scientists, both in and outside Hungary, represents a unique source of input for these programs, and we very much hope that the hub will also provide an additional channel for us through which we can engage with the most distinguished members of European science. I am particularly glad that this engagement will not simply extend to, but will directly promote the participation of young scientists and scientists of so-called widening countries in the activities of Academia Europaea and EU research programs. The 4 thematic programs of the Hub, which you will shortly hear more about, partly cover areas in which our Academy has already been successfully integrating the knowledge and experience of Hungarian researchers. We will do our best to maintain and further exploit these synergies. Just to highlight one theme, let me draw your attention to the methodology of science education, which as a thematic mission of the Hub has clearly been based on an academy research program implemented under a similar title by President Lovász during his term in office as President of the Academy. I hope that the Hub will also benefit from the new alumni program I am about to launch, which will bring science workshops to secondary schools with the involvement of over 1,000 members of our public association. I hope that under all 4 thematic programs and also beyond them, the Hub will open new doors of European and regional cooperations. I am proud that the Budapest office will become a member of an already well-established network of 8 Academia Europaea centers all over Europe, and I look very much forward to the cooperation that shall emerge from this valuable network. With these expectations in mind, I can promise to you that the Hungarian Academy of Sciences will stand behind the Budapest Hub for many years to come. Before I let my colleagues welcome you as well, let me wish you good luck for future activities and express my hope that next time, already in post-COVID world, I will be able to greet you all in person here in Budapest. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, President Freund. It truly is a great honor for us that despite the constraints imposed due to the pandemic, the President of Academia Europaea, Professor Cloetingh, has made it to Budapest and is here with us and is able to present his speech in front of you. Professor Cloetingh, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Gergely. And thank you very much also, Professor Freund, for your warm words and for your commitment to make this hub a success. For Academia Europaea, the launch of this hub today in Budapest is really a milestone. It makes for us a big difference to have this hub, and it's very clear to us that its mission is in the core of where we are standing for with our academy. Our academy is a young academy and founded in 1988 at a time of very important political changes in the European landscape. And you see here a picture of the foundation meeting, and among the people who had the vision to establish this academy is our Vice President, Professor Ole Petersen, today Director of our Cardiff hub. The vision of these people is more pertinent today than ever. Nobody told these people to form a European academy. It was their initiative in a bottom-up spirit. And today, more than 30 years later, we have grown to an academy where we have more than 4,500 members all over Europe. This is a picture of a very happy event where we celebrated our 30 years jubilee, offered by the Royal Society in London. You see here in the center Robert Jan Smit, former Director General of Research and Innovation, the European Commission, just with his gold medal that he received for his service to research and innovation in Europe at large. You see also on the front row the founding president, Sir Arnold Bergen, and you see also a prominent member of our board, Éva Kondorosi, who is also present here today. Our mission is to promote a wider appreciation of the value of European scholarship and research, to make recommendations to national governments and international agencies concerning matters affecting science, scholarship and academic life in Europe, and to encourage interdisciplinary and international research in all areas of learning, particularly in relationship to European issues. And last but not least, to identify topics of trans-European importance to science and scholarship. Our strategic priorities are formulated in the strategic plan, and you see in the center of these strategic priorities, it is there to create beneficial collaborations and partnerships. And that's exactly where it's all about in establishing this Budapest hub. That's really in the core of our strategic vision for the years to come. In the meantime, a young Academy of Europe has been established, an initiative of holders of ERC starting grantees, again a bottom-up initiative. Nobody told these people to create a young academy. It was their initiative. They realized that they received very prestigious grants, but they also felt a responsibility for science at large and for the people of their generation. And we are very happy that this young Academy of Europe is affiliated to Academia Europaea. Science advice for policy by European academies to the European Commission is also a very important development. SAPEA is the acronym that stands for this. A consortium of 5 partners, including Academia Europaea, and you see here the other partners in crime, ESAC, Eurocase, ALEA and FEE. And we are very happy with the prospect to have a follow-up in SAPEA Plus for the period to come in the new Horizon program. And we are also very happy to have in this SAPEA Plus the young academies with us in the consortium. It shows that basically we are on the curve. It shows basically that despite the present difficult phase in our society, that there are prospects. And I think the process of self-organization is crucial in this. And we, as Academia Europaea, are ready for this. We are engaged. Our work in SAPEA centers around the production of evidence review reports. You see here the cover of a number of these reports where Academia Europaea was the lead academy in the SAPEA consortium. The role model for all these reports has been the report on food from the oceans, but also a very important report is making sense of science, living with the uncertainties in scientific knowledge, but give an honest picture to the decision makers, basically to inform them where the science stands on very crucial issues which are on the table for the European Commission. And what is very important that we can draw here on the full scale of our memberships. And an important role in this process is played by the hubs that we have established in the last few years all over Europe. In Barcelona, Bergen, Cardiff, Tbilisi, Wroclaw, and also more recently in Munich. And what is important that all these hubs have a thematic focus, but also a regional dimension. And of course, in the last few years, we have established very close contact with the Hungarian Academy and the Hungarian members of our European Academy. And this is just illustrated by a few nice pictures on various occasions where you see the engagement of our Hungarian members and also the recognition that we like to give them on behalf of our academy. And an example of this is László Lovász, who received the very prestigious Academy Hypatia Prize awarded to him in 2019 in Barcelona. Different workshops here at the Hungarian Academy of Sciences, and of course our joint meeting with ALEA at the premises of Hungarian Academy of Sciences, where we had a beautiful annual conference. And we are also very proud on our board member Éva Kondorosi, who recently joined the European Commission's group of chief scientific advisors. So the mission of the hub, and you will hear more about this later on, is really something that is very close to our heart. And President Freund has just expressed basically that this is something that is very much based on the strength of the community here. And basically we are in that context, in this transition of the different Horizon programs, in a time full of uncertainties, that we can say this hub is solid as a rock and this mission stands for something. And in that context, I would like to express on behalf of Academia Europaea our deep appreciation, and we are very grateful to the Hungarian Academy of Sciences, to our Hungarian members, Lovász, the first director of the hub, Tamás Freund, president of the Hungarian Academy, our board member Éva Kondorosi, and of course also to Gergely for making the Budapest hub reality and for organizing this hub today. A big thank you to all of you.
Thank you, Professor Cloetingh, for your speech. And now I would like to invite Professor László Lovász, mathematician, former president of the Hungarian Academy of Sciences, and the academic director of the Budapest Knowledge Hub. There is no need to emphasize the instrumental role in laying the foundations of this, his instrumental role in laying the foundations of this hub. Professor Lovász, it is now your chance to get the ball rolling with your opening address.
Distinguished guests, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. In the bad old days of Cold War, we tried to establish our community as a bridge between East and West. Hungarian scientists organized workshops, summer schools, conferences, at which Soviet, East German, and other East Bloc scientists had the possibility to meet their colleagues from the West. Physicists were commuting from Dubna to CERN and to Budapest, and thereby serving as a transmission of information, scientific information. And there are many other examples of similar nature which happened. Maybe I can mention my mentor, Paul Erdős, one of the great scientists of the 20th century, who was called everywhere as a traveling ambassador of mathematics. He was traveling east and west, north and south, and everywhere where he learned something interesting, something new, some new ideas, some new problems, he conveyed those problems to our community and to every other community, but still he spent most of his time in Budapest, and so we got all that information established. Of course, nowadays, this very sharp division, very sharp wall between East and West is gone, but its shadow lingers. And other shadows of walls and borders from more ancient times are still visible, or they can be still felt in Europe, where many nations have fought at one point or other with each other over the centuries. In particular, as a consequence of the Cold War and the Iron Curtain, we can still see differences in wealth, in political setup, in good and bad traditions, or in the lack of these traditions. So this emphasizes one of our focal points, the widening participation. It is clear that I have felt it many times that scientists in a more stable, more established, richer countries, more developed countries, have been very helpful with scientists in the rest of the world. They were trying to help in many, many possible ways. But there are two dangers which I have experienced over the last, say, 30 years repeatedly. And this can be summed up in two short sentences. One sentence is, we know what is best for you. And the other sentence is, we know what is best for us. Neither one of these sentences is true. If we want to have an efficient program of widening participation, we have to have very, very deep discussions about the reasons, the factors that are in the way of a more efficient scientific life in certain countries, and therefore this task of our hub is of central importance. Through this region, there is one big river that goes through, and the Danube, and we of course love it, and it's very important, it's beautiful, it brings water, it brings tourists, it connects many countries. It also divides, because it's bringing contamination, sediment, it's causing floods, it's bringing traffic, even big traffic accidents can happen on the Danube. So it is very important to keep it clean, to work out programs across the whole region, which help to preserve the Danube as it is, maybe even improve it. When I was a child, we could still swim in the Danube. Now it's not really advisable, but maybe we can restore it with time, this clean and nice clean water in the Danube. And the Danube flows through several big cities, and we love those cities. This region is rich in cities which are considered beautiful sort of all over the world, not only among us. Prague, Bratislava, Vienna, Budapest, these are all targets of a lot of tourism, and people really love to look at these, to come and visit, and so it's very important that we keep them like this. And it's a very difficult task to keep a city, because the more people come here to visit, the more it shifts in the direction of a museum, but also we have to maintain them as live cities, which provide jobs to the people who live there, provide not only entertainment, but schools, provide all sorts of important services to the people who live there. Therefore, I'm talking about our third program here, which is sustainable urban development. We should really work hard on this, and there's good reason to work on this. And last but not least, I would like to talk a little bit about education. Education is considered to be a task of each nation in the European community, which is just as well. I am not advocating an EU regulation of education, but please keep in mind that students who leave the education system, they will enter a job market which is spread all over Europe. So the education systems cannot be independent of each other and independent of the European scene. So exchange of ideas, educational methods, coordination of goals, and measuring the success of the particular educational systems are all very important elements, very important tasks that we have to perform in order to produce, that our schools will produce students who will be able to help Europe to go ahead and to maintain its intellectual level. I could say that we need science of education and we need education of science, and both are important tasks for this hub and for the whole community in Hungary and in other countries. So these are some thoughts about these focal points that we have discussed with Academia Europaea and accepted. And I would like now to hand over the virtual floor to more presentations about these focal points. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Lovász, for this opening address. And indeed, now we move to the first thematic mission of the Hub, widening European participation. Just like all 4 thematic missions, this mission is also co-chaired by a Hungarian member of Academia Europaea and a member of the Hungarian Young Academy. In this case, Professor Éva Kondorosi, plant biologist, board member of Academia Europaea, a member of the Hungarian Academy of Sciences, former vice president of the ERC, and now also the member of the group of chief scientific advisors working for the European Commission. And from the side of the Hungarian Young Academy, Dr. Gergely Toldi, a physician specialized in neonatology and a researcher in immunology, and a member of the Global Young Academy. But in this session, we will also hear an interesting account of some real science from Dr. Enikő Kubinyi, a young biologist of ELTE, Eötvös Loránd Science University, who is also a member of the Young Academy of Europe and an ERC grantee studying dogs' behavior. But first, we will start with the presentation of Professor Kondorosi.
And gentlemen, good afternoon. My name is Éva Kondorosi. I am a board member of Academia Europaea and also chair of the Widening European Participation Task Force. This task force highly relies on the activity of the Widening European Participation mission of the Budapest Hub, and I, together with Gergely Toldi, are co-chairs of this mission and activity. Academia Europaea is a pan-European academy. Therefore, membership must be representative, including talents from all over Europe. Membership statistic confirms, however, geographical imbalance and major representation of the EU 15 countries. There are also widening gaps in research performance across Europe, and this continues to be a major concern. Therefore, widening European participation is a priority of the Academia Europaea and a major mission of the Budapest Hub. These slides illustrate the discrepancy in the Academia Europaea memberships. EU 15 countries like UK, France, Germany, Italy have very many members, in contrast to the EU 13 countries indicated with the red arrows, or those countries which belongs to the European research area but not member of EU yet, have very low representation. Here, Hungary is somewhat exception with its 133 members. This discrepancy is also valid for the European grant competition, and here I show the example on the European Research Council grant success rate, and you can see that EU 15 countries have much higher success rate than the EU 13 countries. However, this is not the only problem, the success rate, but also the problem is that from this country there are very few high quality applications. And for this reason, EU 13 countries profit only 2% of the European Research Council budget. And this is surely valid also for other European grant applications. So the Budapest Hub is going to focus on the Danube countries. The major roles will be to identify and nominate excellent scientists for Academia Europaea membership, as well as to develop networks and scientific interactions in the Danube regions, linked primarily to the other 3 thematic missions of the Budapest Hub. We plan to apply for COST and Horizon Europe grants in the coming years. There are 6 knowledge hubs of Academia Europaea, and we would like to complement their work and work with them in synergy. And in the widening participation, mainly we are going to work with the Wroclaw, Tbilisi, and the Bergen hub. It is also important to participate in the Science Advice for Policy by European Academies, the so-called SAPEA consortium, because this is important that scientists from this region give also their voice and opinion on scientific advice for policy. Widening is very important for all of us, but this is essential for young researchers. Here you can see the founding members of the Young Academy who express their willingness and enthusiasm to participate on the widening European participation actions. And now I would like to thank you for your attention and give the floor to Gergely Toldi, who is going to give you more information about our program and also perspectives of young career researchers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Kondorosi. And indeed, the next presentation is from Gergely Toldi, is about to start now.
Dear participants of the launch event, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Gergely Toldi, and it is my great pleasure to give you a brief introduction to the widening European participation thematic mission of the new Budapest Hub, particularly focusing on the early career researcher's perspective. Widening European participation is not a new idea. There has been a historical gap in research performance and a disbalance in the distribution of EU science funding. There's also a gap in the membership of Academia Europaea nominations, as well as in the support mechanisms for early career researchers. Here, I'm particularly emphasizing the disbalance between the development of the young academy movement in the western and eastern part of Europe. Brain drain has remained a problem, particularly for young researchers, and overall there is a need to maintain excellence in European science while supporting underperforming countries and regions. I would like to use 2 surveys as an example, one from Hungary and one from the UK, to demonstrate how early career researchers think about this problem. The first survey was called Young Researchers in Hungary and was conducted in March 2018. And participants were under the age of 45 years in this survey, and all disciplines were represented. This was a very successful endeavor in the sense that we received over 1,500 responses. And on these pie charts here, you can see the age as well as the gender distribution of the respondents. I would like to show 2 questions of the survey that I think were very interesting and very representative of the degree of the problem, at least in Hungary, regarding international mobility. The first question was about whether the respondent had any international research experience over the duration of 3 months or more after graduation. As you can see, 60% of the participants of the survey did not have that experience. However, there was a great demand to take part in international research abroad for a longer period of time. 84% of the respondents had this identified as a specific need. We also asked the participants of this survey about the support mechanisms needed to progress with their research. And the greatest need on a scale of 5, identified as absolutely necessary or very necessary, was support and mentoring with international grant applications. Over 1,300 respondents found this necessary, as well as support with international collaborations. In another survey conducted amongst UK early career researchers in September 2019, international collaboration was also of great emphasis. Over 500 responses were analyzed in this second survey. And again, you can see the gender and the age distribution of the respondents here. Just one question to emphasize from the survey. Amongst the number of choices in how interested early career researchers were in improving various domains and aspects of their research, collaborations with Europe and the rest of the world ranked as first. So clearly there is a need not only in Central and Eastern European countries for improving collaboration, but also in the Western part of Europe as well. Many ideas have been considered before for widening collaboration. This list, of course, is not exhaustive, but it is just highlighting some of these ideas that were discussed earlier on several aspects within the European Union. Increasing the number of underrepresented countries in research consortia was a need that was identified. Creating and exploiting pockets of excellence is, of course, also very important. Improving the governance of national research and innovation systems was felt to be very important as well. The remuneration of researchers and the disbalances within and addressing those disbalances is, of course, very much linked to brain drain, and therefore this also needs to be addressed ideally. Attributing more funding to spreading excellence and the specific objectives of widening participation would also be needed, and strengthening the role and the use of national contact points was also something that was identified as necessary. Of course, the Budapest Hub will not be able to address all of these points, and several levels and layers of support mechanisms are needed to address these all. But hopefully we will be able to participate in addressing some of these issues. So the specific goals of the widening European participation thematic mission are monitoring the growth of Academia Europaea membership from the Danube countries, establishing close collaborations with a representative AE member and ECR from each Danube country, identifying the strength of countries and potential common scientific interests, particularly in association with the other 3 thematic missions of the Hub, involving Academia Europaea members in mentoring programs to help early career researchers, and collaboration with other hubs, as well as the Young Academy of Europe. And in my final slide, I'd like to introduce the Young Academy of Europe to those of you who haven't heard about it, with a specific focus on their core activities on widening participation, which I think is very well in line with our goals here in the Budapest Hub. So the Young Academy of Europe is a pan-European academy of top young researchers, and their mission statements include to provide input into scientific exchange and policy across the EU and associated countries from a younger perspective, as well as to enhance networking and collaboration. With regards to widening participation, they seek to increase inclusivity by engaging young researchers in Central and Eastern European countries. They already have some experience with organizing mentoring events for young researchers to support them with application for the ERC starting grants. They also aim to collaborate with the Academia Europaea in terms of follow-up workshops and grant writing, and other mentorship projects are also planned. So, as I mentioned, we are very much looking forward to this collaboration within the Budapest Hub with the Young Academy of Europe and other stakeholders as well. Finally, I would like to thank you for your attention, and I'm going to hand over the virtual stage to one of my colleagues, Enikő Kubinyi, who is an ERC grantee and will give you a brief introduction of her research, as well as how important mentoring was for her to attain the ERC funding. Thank you very much again for your attention.
Thank you very much. And indeed, we will continue with the speech of Dr. Kubinyi about how dogs age.
Welcome. I am Enikő Kubinyi, an ERC starting grantee at the Department of Ethology, Eötvös Loránd University. I lead the Senior Family Dog Project, supported by an ERC starting grant. We explored the cognitive aging of companion dogs with behavioral, genetic, and neuroscientific testing methods, and established a unique donation-based dog brain and tissue bank. So far, we have published 50 papers in the grant period. We collected survey data about 20,000 dogs and tested the behavior of 300 in longitudinal studies. Our main aim is to identify behavioral markers predictive for pathological aging, such as canine dementia, and find protective factors. Interestingly, one of our recent findings has made it to the front page of the Times, as people interpreted the findings as dogs go through a midlife crisis. On the genetic level, we use samples from the brain bank and ran whole genome sequence analysis. For example, we found specific gene variants related to gene regulation, immune response, and the nervous system in extremely old 22 and 27-year-old dogs to understand the genetic background of longevity. Concerning brain activity, with EEG we found that characteristics of sleep spindles change with age. These waves play an essential role in sensory processing and memory consolidation. With fMRI study on trained awake dogs, we found that older dogs distinguish words less than younger dogs. Next, I'm going to tell the story how I won the ERC grant for this research. I started to study dog behavior as a first-year university student in a newly formed group. According to a recent paper in Animal Cognition, this group has always been the major contributor to dog behavior sciences. Due to this early and lucky start, I had 7 papers, including one in current biology, when I obtained my PhD degree. I won awards and postdoc grants because I wrote several proposals each year. With a 4.5-year extension due to my 3 children, in 2015 I had the last chance to apply for an ERC starting grant. Aging seemed to be a good topic because it is a serious challenge globally, and the dog could be a good animal model. When it comes to ERC, a prior screening process or self-assessment is highly recommended. Do you have an outstanding CV? Have you demonstrated creative thinking and leadership? You also need a team. When I was writing my research proposal, a senior colleague who had worked earlier as an ERC panel member commented extensively on my manuscript. A student who wanted to work in my future group also helped a lot. No matter how good you are in proposal writing, pre-reviewing is vital. Send the draft to colleagues, mentors, and ask for feedback. Participate in mentoring events, trainings if available, and look for guidelines, advices on the internet. If the proposal is retained following step 1, applicants of the starting and the consolidator grant have to participate in an interview in Brussels in front of the panel members. Here, applicants have to introduce their research proposal in 10 minutes sharp, and then answer the questions of the external reviewers and the panel members. This is a stressful event and cannot be done without extensive preparation. Unfortunately, neither my university nor the National ERC Contact Point organized personalized trainings at that time, although institutes in Western European countries did so. Therefore, I have organized mock interviews for myself. I visited colleagues in several institutes and asked them to listen to my talk, ask anything they want to, and comment on the slides too. It is important to practice short answering because applicants need to answer 10 to 20 questions in 15 minutes. I have spent more than 2 months in developing my slides for the starting grant interview, but only 3 weeks for the consolidator because this year I didn't have to make slides. To sum up, I warmly welcome the initiative of the AE Hungarian Hub for personalized mentoring events, because not everyone is as lucky as I, surrounded by hugely supportive colleagues. In my institute, with 2 experienced researchers, we started a mentoring program for ERC applicants. I believe that applicants need a team for winning an ERC grant, such as Olympic medalists cannot win without sports equipment manufacturers, facilities, doctors, coach, and a mentor. Even for an individual win, it needs a team performance. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you for this presentation. And now it is time for questions and comments. Please, if you ask questions, please do not forget to unmute your microphone, turn on your video camera, and introduce yourself when you ask the question. But first of all, use the raise hand function in Zoom so that we can identify you. Okay. I cannot see any hands raised. So we will continue to the next thematic missions. Don't worry, if you have a question, you can ask after the introduction of the second thematic session as well. So the next thematic mission of the Hub is the Danube region, which is co-chaired by Professor András Báldi, ecologist, member of Academia Europaea, the doctor of the Hungarian Academy of Sciences, former director of the Hungarian Academy of Sciences Research Center for Ecology. And from the Young Academy, Dr. Katalin Solymosi, biologist, assistant professor at the Institute of Biology at the Eötvös Loránd University, member of the Young Academy, and they are both responsible for the theme Danube region. They will talk about how science can benefit from the many connections, geographical, societal, cultural, or other, that the Danube region represents, and how the Danube region can benefit from stronger connections between the scientific communities of this region. We will start with the presentation of Professor Báldi.
Dear President, dear guests, I'm András Báldi from the Center for Ecological Research Hungary and chairing the Danube region thematic mission with Katalin Solymosi. After the introduction of the assets of the Danube region, I would like to show its values in a wider European context. I will present an example on the values of the rural landscapes for people and nature in this region. As we all know, Europe is an agricultural continent. As the red arrow shows, the pale colors indicates agricultural lands across Europe. Yes, this is a European specialty that this continent is largely human modified. Half of it is farmland and virtually no pristine original habitats remained. A valuable biodiversity developed and living on these farmlands, which evolved there in the last decades and centuries of history. So farmlands in Europe has multiple functions. It should provide food and feed and a viable rural economy and society. But on the other side, it should support biological diversity and ecosystem services, which provide goods and services for the society, such ecosystem services like pollination or control of biological pests, or soil fertility or recreation. Well, this beautiful landscape, Puszta in Hungary, it's really nice and good for recreation, but this is just an example. And what is the state, what is the condition of European farmlands, not only pastures, but all the croplands and arable fields. Let's use this bird species, the skylark, which is a common European bird, to indicate how these farmland habitats are now, because this bird species occur in these open lands. And this is a map of Europe with the countries and showing the long-term population trend of the skylark. Dark arrow indicates large decrease, red moderate decrease, and the pale red indicates small decrease in the population size. If there is no arrow, it's stable, at least on a very long term. And you can see, first of all, that there is no increasing trend. There is no increasing population of the skylark across Europe. But what is important here is that there is a clear regionality in the population status of the skylark, indicating differences in the state of rural areas across Europe. Countries belongs to the Danube region and which are in the black circle usually has a stable population or with small decrease, while Western and Northern Europe has populations with large decrease or moderate decrease of population size. So there are great differences in the population trends and status of the skylark, which indicates in more general the condition and naturalness of farmlands in Europe. So there are big differences between West and East. The reasons for this are well known, and I just put 2 slides to show what is behind the patterns. One is the different landscape structure of farmlands in eastern and western part of Europe, and also the use of agrochemicals, a major part of agricultural intensification, pesticides, fertilizer use on crops, on grasslands are extremely different, as these examples show for the UK and for Hungary. Even grasslands are not fertilized in these countries, in Hungary and around widespread practice in Western Europe. Okay, regionality. Why are these differences so important for the Danube region? where farmlands are, well, in general, seems to be better condition than in the West with more natural values. Well, because there are large changes ahead. The European Green Deal, which released its biodiversity and farm-to-fork strategies this May, targeting rather brave and rather radical changes in the landscapes of Europe, with organic farming should cover much more areas, restoration should recover a lot areas, and so on. So regionality should give some guidance for us where and how to proceed with this restoration and rewilding efforts. Why? Because if there are areas and farmlands with rather high management intensity, there is a big decrease in management intensity. We result in a small gain in biodiversity. Okay, but in a medium management intensity level, there can be much higher gain in biological diversity if restoration is proceeding and management intensity is declining. Even I have to say that there are some regions here where management is, let's say, traditional, in the sense that still very similar to what our fathers and grandfathers' generation used to do. And this is a great asset of the Danube region and its countries, because it's mostly disappeared from other parts of Europe. So in the light of the policy changes, it is clear that we should conserve and restore the low-intensity farmlands, what we have in the Danube region. We should put serious efforts to maintain the last remnants of this traditional ecological farming and the knowledge behind it. And all these are rather urgent tasks, as agriculture and management is still intensifying, and as a consequence, farmland biodiversity is sharply declining, as shown on this figure, with the steeply declining yellow line, which indicates the farmland birds, common farmland birds, which means that in the last decades, 3 or 4 individuals from every 10 birds disappeared. There are much less birds around us in the farmlands. The good thing, however, that these still existing low-intensity farming systems can provide baseline for sustainability farming, to show that what we are needed and what we are simply not needed to have a low-intensity sustainable farming system. So there are systems which can provide a baseline for them. And then we can use this knowledge in the West to guide the restoration and the revitalization and the improving naturalness of the still very highly intensively used farmlands there. So the Danube region has rather valuable rural landscapes and nature capital with high biodiversity and low intensity sustainable farmlands. And the knowledge on these systems can provide guidance to restore other regions of Europe. So in most countries of our region, Danube region, we used to consider international scientific collaborations as one-way route from the west to the east. But as this example on rural assets and the nature capital of the region showed, it can be just the opposite for some cases. Thank you very much for your attention.
Now we will continue with the address of Dr. Solymosi.
Dear President, highly honored guests, dear colleagues, before I introduce the thematic mission and its objectives, let's start with some dry facts. The Danube is considered to be the most international river in the world. During its 2,850 kilometers long journey, it links 10 countries. Its source is located in the Black Forest in Germany, from which it flows through Austria, Slovakia, Hungary, Croatia, Serbia, Romania, Bulgaria, for a very short segment through Moldova, and finally Ukraine, where it drains into the Black Sea with the Danube Delta, one of the world's most valuable and best preserved ecological habitats. The European Commission now recognizes the Danube as the single most important non-oceanic body of water in Europe and the future central axis for the European Union. As a river, it has been for long a vital commercial and water transport highway between the different nations living along it. On the other side, throughout history, starting maybe even earlier than the Roman Empire, the Danube has been an important border river, creating not only a link but also a boundary between great empires, as witnessed by the castles and fortresses that are lining its banks. The Danube played a vital role in the settlement and political evolution of Central and Southeastern Europe. As a river, it naturally shaped the geographical landscape, affected agricultural production, but also had and still has a strong influence on the environmental, historical, and political landscape of the region. The Danube Basin also unifies and sustains a wealth of diverse cultures and traditions. In spite of the important differences between the various nations, their spoken languages and local customs, the countries of the Danube region also share several common points of history, cultural heritage, and religion, that is, Christianity. This explains some architectural similarities represented on this slide by the example of two Gothic cathedrals located in the westernmost and the easternmost countries of the region. We should also mention the musical geniuses and world-renowned composers born in these countries, who were also greatly inspired by the rich cultural and national heritage of the region. The Danube's drainage basin covers a really large area of more than 18 countries. There are 83 million people living directly on the Danube River basin, out of which more than 20 million depend directly on the river for their drinking water, that is, primarily groundwater from domestic wells. Although more than 80% of the length of the Danube has been regulated by now, which resulted in a severe reduction in habitats and biodiversity, it still shares similarities in the natural environment, and several measures taken in the last 30 years were successful to protect or restore its highly diverse and unique wildlife. The countries of the Danube region also face similar and common challenges, such as floods and long drought periods, increased average temperatures and heat waves in summer, and environmental problems such as microplastics and antibiotic pollution. One of the main missions of the Budapest Knowledge Hub is to study the natural and social phenomena of the Danube region and to facilitate inter- and transdisciplinary exchanges and collaborations, both in research and in science advice within the region. It offers also a possibility of communicating and networking with other actors concerned, for example, decision makers and politicians. These missions are also in line with the European Union strategy for the Danube region and may build on the results and the expert basis of already existing national initiatives like the Hungarian Water Science Program. Thus, the Budapest Knowledge Hub may act as a catalyst for exchanges between scientists of the Danube countries, promoting therefore scientific excellence and offering opportunities also for young researchers. The commitment to involve young scholars is not just empty words, but is also proved by the fact that junior co-chairs of the Hungarian Young Academy are already involved in all thematic missions of the Hub. What are the actions we plan to implement? It is important to foster joint activities, and we can do so by facilitating grant applications and joint projects announced and run by important state actors or private companies. We want to organize lectures, seminars, roundtable discussions and workshops, as well as, if possible, also bigger events like conferences to spread knowledge, information, and new experiences about the Danube region. Summer schools, as well as participation at the World Science Forum organized in Budapest, are also envisaged. Other actions planned include scientific outreach activities, for example, events connecting arts and science. These can be photo exhibitions, literary composition, documentary film screenings, or even concerts related in a way to the Danube region. Networking between the different structures, Academia Europaea and its hubs, and the national young academies is also an important objective. The establishment of new awards and prizes may be also envisaged. What we plan to do will hopefully bring tangible results within 5 to 10 years. We hope to achieve the development of a database and a network built upon the participation of internationally well-known scientists. This may increase the importance and the representation of the region in the European science policy scene. Scientific excellence may be awarded with a so-called Budapest Prize that we hope to launch in the coming years. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much indeed. And now again, this is the opportunity for the audience to ask questions. So I'm asking you to raise your hand if you would like to comment or ask questions from the presenters. Thank you. So if there are no questions, then we will move on with the program to the next thematic mission of the Hub, which is methodology of science education. This mission is co-chaired by Professor Csaba Pléh, cognitive scientist, professor of psychology, member of Academia Europaea, and member of the Hungarian Academy of Sciences, and actually the former president of the Academy's Committee on Public Education. And from the Young Academy, Dr. Eszter Selman, mathematician, associate professor at the University of Debrecen, Institute of Mathematics, who is specialized in mathematical analysis and functional equations. She is board member of the Hungarian Academy of Young Scientists. First, we will hear an introduction by Professor Pléh, who I would like to invite now to start his speech.
Well, thank you very much for the possibility to introduce this topic. I am actually trying to show you only 2 slides. Our aim is, we have heard already two projects initiated by the Budapest Hub, which are concentrating on issues of the region. Our aim is rather different from this. While we start from the experience of the Hungarian Academy, as both President Lovász and President Freund mentioned, the Hungarian Academy has a 6-year-old tradition and a still longer tradition of being involved in issues of science education. And our aim is to reach out, not for reasons of self-pity or creating a crisis atmosphere about issues of science education all over Europe, but to see areas and ways of helping with sharing information. As Professor Lovász mentioned, education is a national policy issue all over Europe. We don't want to interfere in this, but we want to share ideas about good practices. There are many motivations behind this program. The first one is there is a general declining popularity of science careers. There is a lot of poor understanding of uses and nature of scientific knowledge. We shall see some of these issues in the presentation of Esther coming after me. And we, rather than, as I mentioned, rather than creating a crisis atmosphere and self-pity of the scientists, we want to help those scientists and educators who are involved in creating new methods of science education to promote their ideas. Now, the short-term program on the right side of this chart, I'm showing the short-term aims. What are we planning to do in the coming year, in 2021? From January, April, we want to do some fact-finding through making contacts with the other hubs and with the leadership of Academia Europaea in general. We want to gather ideas where to find new practices in science education. Then for a few months, we're going to analyze this data and then promote the good practices, see how public they are, how which programs are free and easily adaptable, and so on. Sort of in line with the recent lockdown situations, we are planning 2 workshops in the coming year, but they're going to be virtual workshops with 20 to 40 participants. The first one is relating the COVID-2 situation to the issue of the public image of science and how it relates to increasing science awareness and science education. And then the other, probably in October or November, is going to concern science education roots in Europe. What are the different possibilities for methodical and contentful innovations in science education? We hope that there's going to be, in this process, there's going to be a collaboration between formal, non-formal, and informal educational providers, starting from schools going to actually company teachings and self-help teaching enterprises. And we hope to reach out by both in gathering information and in promoting good practices to the general public, not only to the science education authorities. So both, we want to increase awareness, help people, and help the authorities in each country who are involved in science education. Thank you for your attention, and thank you for your hopefully continuing support in collaborating towards science education. Esther, in her talk, is going to provide examples of how the recent virus situation raises the issue of some area of awareness about science and about its teaching. Thank you again.
Thank you, Professor Pléh. And now we will, as you introduced, continue with the presentation of Esther Xelman.
Ladies and gentlemen, as the junior member of the thematic session called Science Education of the Academia Europaea Budapest Knowledge Hub, I warmly and respectfully welcome all of you. In this talk, I would like to speak about the most basic mathematical model, about the so-called exponential model. In our everyday life, we are using lots of mathematics, even though we don't really realize this fact. I think that this year, 2020, will certainly be memorable about the so-called coronavirus pandemic. And in this regard, it's important to point out that, for example, the growth of bacteria or viruses follow this model as well, such as the normal reproduction in an undisturbed population. Another example for the exponential model is the decay of radioactive or, for example, plastic materials. But this model is really useful when we would like to find the age of a bone. This model also appears when we deal with, for example, compound interest. And finally, the last example is about tsunami forecasting. In this topic, exponential models are also used. It's important to point out that this model, so the exponential model, can be formulated as a discrete one and can also be formulated as a continuous model. First of all, I would like to speak about the discrete model. This model appears, as I mentioned before, in case of the growth of a bacterial or viral colony, but it also appears when we are interested in the growth of depth due to compound interest, or in case of the spread of viral videos. Looking this formula, which describes the nature of the discrete exponential model, x0 represents the initial quantity. As usual in mathematics, t denotes the quantity at time t, and this quantity is describing the increasingness or the decreasingness of this process. As I mentioned, this problem can be formulated in a continuous way as well. In real-world applications, we need to model the behavior of a function. And in mathematical modeling, we usually choose a familiar general function with properties that suggest that it will model the real-world phenomenon we wish to analyze. In the case of rapid growth, we may choose for this job the so-called exponential function. Here, similarly as in the case of discrete model, x0 denotes the initial quantity, and as usual, t denotes the time, and xt describes the quantity we would like to analyze at time t. It's important to point out that exponential growth is a really specific way that a quantity may increase over time. It occurs when the instantaneous rate of change, in terms of mathematics, this is the so-called derivative of a quantity with respect to time, is proportional to the quantity itself. Described as a function, the quantity undergoing exponential growth is an exponential function of time. That is, the variable representing time is the exponent, in contrast to other types of growth, such as, for example, the linear growth or the quadratic growth. If the constant of proportionality is negative, then the quantity decreases over time and is said to be undergoing exponential decay instead. In case of a discrete domain of definition with equal intervals, it is also called geometric growth or geometric decay, since in this case the function values form a geometric progression. It's important to emphasize that students meet this model, especially the discrete one, at a very early age. And exponential growth is an important topic beginning in the middle grades, and it's encountered in increasingly complex variation in subsequent grades. A focus on the conceptual underpinnings of exponential growth is highlighted in many national standards documents. A deep understanding of the exponential function plays a critical role in university mathematics courses such as calculus, differential equations, or, for example, complex analysis. Despite of the importance of a robust understanding of exponential growth, instruction proves challenging given students is documented in difficulties in understanding this topic. So there are many problems with the understanding of this model. Just to show you some problems from this area. Research on secondary students reveals challenges in making the transition from linear representation to exponential representations, and in identifying what makes data exponential. Furthermore, studies investigating teachers identify struggles in both understanding and instruction of exponential growth. Teachers appear to have a strong understanding of exponential growth as repeated multiplication, but struggle to connect this understanding to the closed form equation, to recognize growth as exponential in nature, and to appropriately generalize rules such as the multiplication and power properties of exponents. Just to show you how this problem can be solved, I recall here an experiment. In an experiment, a plant called the cactus grew by doubling its initial height every week, and students could explore the growing cactus by comparing its height over time with the specially designed GeoGebra script. Students could manipulate the cactus by dragging its base with the mouse, observing as the plant continually increased or decreased its height and as it moved along the x-axis. Later in the teaching experiment, the growth factor was changed to values other than 2, and the initial height to values other than 1 inch. The aim was to develop a context in which students could explore two continuously covariant quantities. And after the experiment, students entered the session with a qualitative understanding of exponential growth, describing such growth as beginning slowly and becoming faster over time. Many students accompanied this explanation with gestures indicating a curve that grew sharply steeper over time. Students could not, however, quantify the manner in which the plant grew. Exploration with the GeoGebra program enabled the students to begin to solidify and articulate a repeated multiplication understanding of this exponential growth. So after the experiment, students understand that the y values, so the heights, grow larger at an increasing rate over time, but the manner of increase is unquantified. Furthermore, students understand that repeated multiplication determines how height grows without attending to time. And finally, students also understand that the magnitude of growth factor determines how growth occurs. Now, as approaching the end of my talk, one might ask that how scientific education comes into the picture. I think that as a world, we have got some serious challenges facing us. For example, global warming, health, and food care, and technology evolving at an increasingly rapid rate. In order for us as a society to deal with these problems, we need a scientifically literate populace. If we as a person can use scientific and critical thinking in our life, we will be empowered to better understand the world. Therefore, our general aim in this thematic session is to have science classes where students learn from active, hands-on, and on meaningful problems. All of us can learn think scientifically and critically, and it's important to point out that science is much, much more than a school exam or a stack of knowledge. I think, and I also strongly believe that with scientific and critical thinking, we will be smarter and richer, and we, and what is more, our children, will deserve it. I think that this is all I wanted to say. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you for this presentation. And again now it is the audience's opportunity to ask questions. So I'm going to look at the hands in the virtual air. But it seems that I cannot see any. So we will move on to the next. And in this even the last mission of the hub, that of urban sustainability. This is a theme that we hope will not only benefit from the cooperation between Academia Europaea hubs across Europe, but also the network of cities committed to sustainable development. The mission is co-chaired by Professor Gábor Stépán, Professor of Applied Mechanics at the Budapest University of Technology and Economics, member of Academia Europaea and member of the Hungarian Academy of Sciences, and Professor Péter Török, a botanist and conservation biologist at the University of Debrecen, member of Young Academy of Europe, co-president of the Hungarian Academy of Young Scientists. We will start with the introduction of Professor Stépán, whom I would like to ask to deliver his speech now.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and I am privileged to take part in this action. What I always enjoy in academia is that you can meet the best experts of other fields of science, and this is especially challenging when you start talking to these people. Another introductory thought about the symbol of the Accademia Nazionale dei Lincei, the Italian Academy. So why is this magnificent animal, the lynx, selected by the scientists to represent their community? At the time of the foundation of that academy, it was thought that it is the lynx that has the best vision, that can look the farthest ahead. And indeed, our goal is to see ahead into the future, to help making strategic decisions with our science-based predictions. Our thematic mission, the urban sustainability, definitely requires a way of thinking like this. There are undeniable trends showing that globalization leads to the birth and development of larger and larger cities, expanding urban areas, under which I mean not just the cities, but suburbs and adjacent rural areas. While opposite trends also exist, like the global village, where from informatics viewpoint, we start getting connected and knowing about each other as it is in traditional villages. There are unimaginable data accumulated in recent years regarding urbanization, but we have less information from the past, the deep past, hundreds, thousands years back, which show that the extension of cities often led to catastrophic collapses from economic, ecological, financial, public health, medical, social, or other reasons. The Academy of Europe has the diverse expertise to harmonize the different components of scientific research related to urban sustainability to bridge the various time scales and the various spatial scales. Urban sustainability is a relatively new segment of the global efforts on sustainable development, on environment protection, or simply on climate stabilization, but it has got in the focus quickly. It is often mentioned in many recent interdisciplinary research projects. One reason for this is the city's capability for rapid, even abrupt changes. And this can be steered in the right direction to achieve our sustainability goals on a short timescale, although the danger of sudden catastrophes is also there. In other words, the growing urban populations and the increased environmental, social, and economic impact of urban lifestyles put major cities to the forefront of global sustainability actions. Beside the great opportunities of higher levels of urbanization, including the benefits of advancement of the business sector, diversification of economy, and improved goods and services it provides, improved transportation systems, and increased diversity of culture and increased scientific output. So beside all these, urbanization faces the societies to several challenges which need to be addressed. Extremes appear: overpopulation in urban areas and depopulation of rural ones, districts of over-tourism and areas of unorganized segregation, higher levels of social conflicts and higher risks of crimes, not to mention increased levels of pollution and amplified consequences of environmental disasters, including earthquakes, floods, epidemic, which are not expected. Still, cities are often unprepared for. To face these challenges, the urban areas should be reorganized in a sustainable way. This reorganization of urban areas can support resource-efficient growth, enhance decarbonization of urbanization processes, decrease the ecological footprint of cities, and reduce the quantity of pollution, support efficient land use, improve recycling, convert waste to energy, decrease the city's contribution to global loss of biodiversity and ecosystem services, and mitigate their contribution to climate change. The sustainable operation of urban areas will also drive economic development, create jobs, provide a higher quality of life, and have positive impact on the global environment and economy. Transdisciplinary sustainability research and the involvement of scientists in the development of urban policies and regulations are growing in importance across city councils, including that of Budapest. Our hubs located in major European cities that were just listed by our presidents in the introduction offer an excellent network for cooperation in urban sustainability studies with many similarities and also complementarities. The dedication of both these and other European cities may also help the funding of joint programs under this theme. The Budapest Hub dedicated one of its thematic missions to the above described urban sustainability. The Academia Europaea and the Young Academy of Europe is in especially suitable interface for those cross-sectional and multidisciplinary approaches. And now, finally, some words about our plans. So within this hub, we especially aim to bring together researchers in the well-known ways, and which are already mentioned in case of other hubs, to facilitate capacity building by involvement of European researchers, or to organize thematic national and regional workshops, seminars, and so on. But definitely the most important thing is to increase the involvement and visibility of young scientists in these fields of research. Regarding the scientific topics which we plan to approach and to carry on at least in the first couple of years of the hub, one is to discuss historical drivers, special opportunities and challenges of urban sustainability in the Visegrad countries and other parts of Central Europe, which region seems to be established a similar cooperation to that of the Benelux or Scandinavian countries or the Mediterranean region. We also plan to integrate and assess the specific sets of goal functions and constraints used by the different research areas related to urban sustainability, which means that each area, each specific field has their own optimization techniques and goals and constraints, but how they constrain each other and how they work together, it is a very intricate and difficult issue. And accordingly, we have to define the possible synergies and the unavoidable trade-offs while entering the era of smart cities, digital transportation systems, and clean energy, which are all areas which are close to my favorites in engineering. We also try to facilitate the discussion on the financial aspects of urban transition for sustainable development. And maybe I should have started with here, which was mentioned as the last one, to organize public seminars and discussions on the multifaceted interactions of the urban environment, health, and human well-being, which would primarily include the analysis of the pandemic from the viewpoint of urban life. But clearly it has an actuality. Clearly the spatial distribution of the epidemic is a much more difficult task than predicting average values of the different regions of a country or of Europe. And in this respect, cities are especially vulnerable. Well, this was a brief overview of our plans in this fourth thematic mission at the Budapest Hub. And now let's have a brief introduction now into one of the specific segments of urban sustainability, namely the urban biodiversity. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now we will continue with the presentation of Professor Török about urban biodiversity.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear audience, you probably know that over 50% of the world's population lives in urban areas. It is predicted to increase to more than 2/3 by 2050. The advance of urbanization has also resulted in global degradation of the natural environment. Rapid urbanization increasing pressure on natural habitats and communities and causing degradation and worst case habitat loss. The degradation affects nearly 25% of terrestrial surface. If this trend continues, 95% of Earth land areas became degraded by 2050. Of course, this 25% means degradation, but some forms of human disturbance affects to date more than 2/3 of terrestrial surfaces. This degradation is also associated with natural habitat loss, which is dramatic. In some Western European countries, there were some assessments made on grassland habitats, and it was found in the last century, more than 90% of grassland areas have been lost. There are various forms of global initiatives which are targeting restoration worldwide, have the aim to mitigate or reverse these trends. I mention only two of these initiatives. There is a Bond Challenge, which aims to bring 350 million hectares of degraded and deforested landscapes into restoration by 2030. This means mostly forest restoration. And there is also a global initiative by the United Nations, the Decade on Ecosystem Restoration 2021-2030, which aims to foster and encourage habitat restoration of various habitats worldwide. How is a habitat restoration looks like in practice? So we identify a site where there is a degraded habitat. In such case, in our case, there is a degraded grassland, and we try to restore this grassland or move this grassland to a more natural state. Or we have, for example, a cropland, a marginal agriculture area where the former agriculture activities ceased, and we would like to utilize this area as target of habitat restoration. So we implement some type of measure. In this case, we use some hay spreading here, and after a couple of years, with proper management of mowing or grazing associated, a high diversity grassland is recovered. Of course, not all of the restoration actions are that successful. So the goal is, the habitat restoration, the goal is to identify disturbed habitats and restore the native flora and fauna, and to ensure the sustainable use of the land, both by wildlife and humans. So very important points is the long-term sustainability, what we achieve by restoration. Most emphasis is given to these actions in rural areas and areas subjected by intensified use of agriculture and its industry. Quite recently, the focus shifted also towards the various green spaces, including, of course, blue spaces, which means lakes and rivers, located in cities. What are urban green spaces we are talking about? You probably know the closest green space to your home. I also know because I bring my children there to play. But it is very important to list because there are various types and plenty of them in an urban area. So there are urban parks and meadows, roadside vegetation barriers along rail tracks. There are small gardens, also private gardens, pocket parks and playgrounds. There are also some cities where green roofs and facades are installed to increase the green spaces in the city. There are coastal, riverside and lakeside trails, recreational and urban gardening facilities, and also urban woodlands, forests and wildlife areas in especially lucky cities. I showed here some examples on the right-hand side of the picture. There are various challenges of urban habitat restoration. There is in general high pressure of urban or suburban development and disturbance. There is fast-flowing, frequently polluted rainwater, including also pollution by heavy metals or raised loads of nutrients. There are altered soil conditions and processes in urban green spaces. We can count with frequent disturbance or heavy trampling. There is rapidly shifting and warmer microclimate compared to rural areas. Green spaces are highly fragmented and isolated by built structures, by asphalt, by other concrete obstacles there. And there is a high risk of biological invasion. These urban green spaces, there are plenty of non-indigenous species planted there or introduced there by accident. So these green spaces, most cases, are hybrid or novel ecosystems. So this should be also taken into account in case of an urban restoration. Why do we need urban restoration? It is important for urban sustainability to mitigate the negative effects of urbanization. It is most effective if we create self-sustaining and healthy green spaces. To mitigate the negative effect of urbanization to the suburban and rural areas, internal buffer zones and buffer habitats are necessary. These can be urban green spaces. And also to sustain urban populations of native wild organisms and enable the migration routes of natural populations by stepping stones and green corridors are also really important. In addition to these, there are some other benefits of urban restoration. City improvements can be more eco-friendly if we make it by carefully planned urban habitat restoration. I have here, unfortunately, a very bad example where plastic grass was spread to imitate the green spaces here. This is not the way what we would like to have in urban restoration. Urban restoration successfully weaved together the needs of diverse groups of people and wildlife. It also helps to reconnect urban people with nature. It leads, of course, additional benefits, including health effects and social well-being, but also can help in the education of people. It helps people to learn the value of nature and understand, at least partly, its functioning. But what are the direct links, what I have already provided here, to Academia Europaea Budapest Hub? We aim a facilitation of knowledge transfer. There is vast experience collected in habitat restoration, rural landscapes and agricultural areas, many parts of Europe. These experiences can be used in urban restoration. We aim to foster the public communication, the importance of urban green spaces, the importance in conservation restoration actions. We would like to initiate cross-sectoral communication, high emphasis on landscape architecture planning, ecosystem engineering and habitat restoration. If you would like to work with us in these initiatives, you may send me your comments and thoughts by email. And you can also check our research in most cases in grassland restoration, grassland functioning at our homepage, also listed here. And I would like to thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you for this presentation, and also I would like to thank all the presenters for their contribution and the audience for their participation. Now it's time for questions, and I would like to mention that this is the last time of the audience to ask questions or make comments about the launch event before I ask Professor Lovász to deliver his closing remarks and close the event. So, yeah, checking if there are any hands in the air. Okay. Oh, I can see one. So go on. Sorry, I cannot see them. name?
Okay, thank you. My name is Ioan Tigheneanu. I represent the Republic of Moldova, and I am the president of the Academy of Sciences of Moldova. I would like to thank the organizers for the invitation to attend this launching event. I can say that there were great, very good presentations. I enjoyed them. And second, I would like to congratulate you with launching the Budapest Knowledge Hub. Well, it's a regional engine of development. I have no doubt that there will be a story of success, and I will be happy to contribute to this success, not only me, but also my colleagues. So I wish success and good luck. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I can see one more hand. Dr. Nguyen, please.
Yes, so hi, my name is Nguyễn Thanh, and I'm the professor at UCL, and I was one of the co-founder of Global Young Academy and founder of Vietnam Young Academy. And I attended the One Science Forum last year in Budapest. So in the relation to the launch, I got a quick question in general, is that obviously this is focused for Europe, but do you have any international activity which is beyond Europe?
I don't know if maybe Professor Lovász would like to.
Yes, I think that we definitely are very more than open. We are anxious to have connections with outside Europe. Of course, this is a hub of Academia Europaea, so we are focusing on issues that are important in Europe, but several of these, including like the urban development, but also education, is a worldwide problem. And so we will try to definitely keep them open for the whole world. What actually the format will be, I am afraid we have to first wait for the passing of this epidemic so that travel could again be going on. We would like to cooperate with the World Science Forum, which is in every fourth year in Budapest. So that is a World Science Forum, not European Science Forum, and therefore it is obviously open to the whole world. So I was very glad to hear your question, and the answer is we'll do our best to keep open all these channels of information that the world could provide and help with us.
Thank you. I can see Professor Valéria Csépa's hand in the air, so please.
Thank you very much. Just to help out the president of the Budapest Hub, of course, all the hubs have a European focus, but we members of the Academia Europaea and the Hungarian Academy of Sciences work in different international organizations, global projects, and the missions are very timely and are in the focus of several organizations like the ISC, the European Council of Science, or I personally take part in two OECD projects, which has they have to have a connection to some of the missions here. One is the research precariat project, so we are finishing soon and will be published the the report and the position paper in January, and the same is the Education 2030 project of the OECD. So there are several activities of all the members, and we can support the Budapest Hub with our knowledge and data we have available. So it's European focused, so in a sense it's local, so as we used to say, and so very general and nothing new. We act locally, that means Europe, but think globally. Thank you.
So, thank you very much. I cannot see any more hands now. So it is Professor Lovász's turn for his closing remarks.
After these interesting and very stimulating introductions to the plans, to these starting original plans, which might change or get probably, I'm pretty sure they will become even richer with time. There is not much left for me. I would like to, well, first of all, thank you all who attended this meeting. I would also like to thank Academia Europaea for setting up this hub with us. I'm sure that this is very important. This will be very important for Hungarian science, for science in the region, for Budapest, and also I hope it will contribute to the success of Academia Europaea. I would like to thank personally to Sierd for coming to Budapest in such an awful time, and I am a bit ashamed because I didn't go to the academy just across the Danube while he crossed Europe in order to get here. So thanks here, that really gave the weight for this opening ceremony. I would also like to thank Gergely Böhm and his team, Fanny Kruppa, Katalin Borbölgyi, for organizing this meeting and for their help with kickoff problems and procedures of this hub. I would like to thank to the program leaders who gave wonderful presentations and who really made me feel that I'm really looking forward to seeing these programs, to participating in various meetings and conferences, or maybe just listening to the presentations, which the current program promises an excellent continuation. And I thank all of you who were present at this kickoff meeting, who therefore will, I hope, help us in the future with our endeavors. And so what is left is I would propose a toast to, that is usual, and under normal circumstances, we would have finished this meeting with a reception with some nice Hungarian wines and with an informal chat about possibilities that are opening up in front of us. I cannot do this, unfortunately, so I think whoever has something to grab, please grab, or maybe after our meeting is over tonight, when you have a little wine with your dinner, maybe you can think of wishing all the best to this hub. Well, the activity of this hub is starting under such, well, I would say, unpleasant and unfortunate circumstances, that it's bound to be a great success. So thank you all for coming, and see you at various events.
Thank you also. I think this is the time to end the meeting, and thank you all for your participation. Thank you. Bye.